Welcome. I'm excited to be here today. We're going to do a part 2 of EMDR, and it's just because when I stop hitting record, I had 20 more things to say about it. So this is going to be a follow-up video from the first version. So if you have not watched the first version, please go ahead and do so. So if you don't know who I am, I'm SindyKing. I'm a creator of Calling My King. I help transform a woman to create lasting love through Vedic astrology, neuroscience, and transactional analysis so that she becomes the queen of love. And we're going to be focusing on part 2 of EMDR, and I'm going to be telling you the pros and cons. And because I have turned off my camera, and I had 20 more other things to say, but I want to break this up. So this is going to be part 2. So I would recommend you watching the first part first before we move on to this section. All right, so let's talk about EMDR when it comes to the clinical part. When it comes to the clinical part, you're going to be talking to a therapist that is an expert in that field. And when you are in front of the clinician, they're going to be script. So that means they have followed a certain script, and they want to know where you are when it comes to your emotion, your brain, and how you feel about a certain situation. So we are reading off a script. This is no surprise at all. There are books on Amazon talks specifically about that. Our brain is the most powerful thing out there when it comes to ourself. And when I say it's so powerful, when I say things like he get into her, you automatically either assume and fill in the blank based on those information. So that's how powerful the brain is. And we want to know, when we're in front of you and you're in front of us, we want to know where your brain is being processed. So we do a lot of mind mapping in EMDR. The next question I get is more on the Q&A side. Can the clinician get off the script? So when we're kind of reading off it, could we actually get off the script? Yes, absolutely. If it's a complex trauma, the clinician or the therapist is allowed to read off the script based on their training. So if they're dealing with complex trauma and not the basic, they can go off other techniques and they can put it in and then go back to the script again. Yes, I have seen that as well. Okay, so another question is very common is about if EMDR does not work and why it doesn't work. So there's a couple factors that are involved. The first one, it is a complex trauma that they might be dealing and it's outside of their scope. The second part is about ego states. So there's multiple egos, or you're dealing with different types of ego states, and that could be also lands in the complex trauma. There's multiple parts of the ego state, and they might be not integrated or not ready to be integrated. And I kind of have a playlist about ego state when it comes to transactional analysis. It does come out when you are verbally speaking as well, and how you think. So that's very clear about that. Another part about EMDR is having a large enough emotional inventory. That means vocabulary, being able to express yourself is ideal. I have created a video regarding about this at the end of this video so that you can have a better education about your psychoeducation when it comes to emotion and having a large enough data of emotional inventory, because your therapist wants to know how you feel about certain things, except the word sad and happy, and that's a good way to start, but let's expand that from there on. A good insight about EMDR, that EMDR is not meant to be a talk therapy. We want to be able to discharge some of the emotion that they might feel that is considered to be uncomfortable, and we want to regulate it as well. So that's the key. And you've been with a therapist for a long time, and you've been doing talk therapy, and they just got trained about EMDR, and you think it's about psychoanalysis or psychodynamic. It's not about that. It's more like, let's find your feelings, let's discharge some of these emotion and discomfort, or let's regulate it as well or integrate it. So there's other factors are involved. It's not about talking about the whole traumatic experience. That's not what EMDR is for. When it comes down to EMDR, a phobia will help you. It is a very light form of exposure therapy, but you're not being exposed immediately. We kind of train you to give you certain tools before we get you there. And your therapist can go with you when it comes to certain phobias. So if you have a fear of getting behind the wheel, they can go to the car behind the wheel and then do EMDR for you there. Or if it's a fear of looking down like a high building, you can look outside the window. There's an option of that after we finish the 8 phases first. So you have to finish the 8 phases, and then you would feel comfortable to actually be exposed to an environment that you have a phobia with. What is a polyphagment dissociative identity disorder? These are the people who have a degree of complex. It has to do with memories, feelings, and it could be emotion into altered parts. And people who have DID, that's what it represents, can have 2 altered parts and they're not integrated. And it's also compartmentalized different memories, feelings, and emotion. It's all in different sectors. So that means that they have a hard time. You guys have heard multi-personality disorder and dissociative identity disorder. It's called DID. And it's a history of trauma, which has a key feature of identity disorder. And a lot of this disorder, when the history was taken, 90% of it is actually came from an abuse of sort of trauma. The trauma has several different involvement. One of them is severe emotions. The other one's physical. The other one is sexual abuse as well. It might also link into accident, natural disaster, or even war as well. The treatment for DID is long-term for this. There is a great resource when it's come to DID being tested, and it's called the National Alliance on Mental Illness. It stands for NAMI. EMDR, there are a small component of hypnosis. For example, it's called the float back. And the float back is part of the table by George Fraser. He created the dissociative disorder and the ego state therapy. Hypoanalysis technique by John Watkins. So there isn't a component of practically, if you're not having a disassociation, we ask you to float back from the earliest memory that you had similar feeling or experience of these memories. So we're floating back from the early experience that you might have this. Alexithymia, and it's a personality subclinical inability to identify or describe the emotions. So that's a very common one that people have experienced. Is alexithymia, and when you hear it, it's just a dysfunctional emotion and it's awareness from a social attachment. So you can learn a little bit more about that. This is more of a technique that I'm going to be talking about with EMDR. It's called the taxing work memories. You are more than welcome to do a research on this. And this is about dual attention. So you're going to be tapping your head, rubbing your stomach, and spelling your crush's last name backwards. Multi-storage model, how the short-term memory and the long-term memory is being processed. And when we're discharging some of these feelings or emotion, this is the phases that we go through. So when we talk about short-term memory, it can actually hold information, and the working memory can hold and retain and process the information. So that's the only difference between the two. The taxing memory is just a technique to help you discharge the uncomfortable feeling that you might have. And it's by doing dual attention that I just gave an example about. And sometimes your therapist will ask you to do a butterfly, and then they'll start making loud noises by clapping. And that's considered to be still a dual attention. It depends how comfortable you are with your therapist, and you're aware of the technique, but you're more than welcome to do some of the research. And then that's about it. So I want to take the time to say thank you for watching this video and allowing yourself to be psychoeducated about this information, because it's really important that you get the right type of treatment. I know there's so many therapists out there that is very helpful, but I think information is really narrowing down where you want to go and what you want to do about it, and how do you get properly diagnosed. Just for example, complex trauma, and complex trauma is complex. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Please feel free to binge watch any of my psychology videos that you feel comfortable, or neuroscience as well. All right, have a good one. Bye now.